Well, good evening, everybody. How are you tonight? It's another Saturday night and it's rained all day. Why, oh, why won't it go away? It's nice all week long. The weekend hits. It's rained every weekend day, just about. So far. Makes it hard to get outside and mow the lawn. I'm just saying. Hard to mow when it's raining. Hello, everybody. Good evening. Glad to have you guys here with me tonight. We are here for the continued reading of The Blacksmith's Boy by Bruce Buchanan. So, let's talk a little bit about how the book started for us. We started with a prologue where some unnamed sorcerers laid waste to a perfectly square area of land that included a farm, a farmhouse, and the inhabitants of that farmhouse. Very not okay. We then met Bok. Bok is the son of a blacksmith, or the blacksmith's boy. And he is a member of the serving class and works as a healer using some basic levels of magic. Folk magic, I want to say we called it. This sounds about right. And he got a summons from Princess Isabella, the princess of his land. He doesn't know why. He made his way to the capital, proceeded to get his stuff stolen by street urchins, and then was almost turned away at the palace before being rescued by Aventil. Aventil is a noble from a very strong merchant family and happens to be the engaged of Princess Isabella. Fast forward to a meeting where the princess tells everybody what is going on, says why Bok is there, because he is a representative who has a different type of magic that he's bringing forward. And they put together a small group to go investigate. At the end of that meeting, Aventil decides that he wants to introduce Bok to Isabella after getting into a little tiff with a member of the Magic Guild. And that is where we will be picking up things tonight. So, if you missed any of chapters 1 through 5 or the prologue, they are all available on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/@SirArminius. Stop on out there, check it out, see what you think. As a little housekeeping reminder, I will be recording the chapters individually again tonight, as I do each of these reads. If you miss any part of it, you are welcome to stop out to the YouTube channel and watch any chapters that you're missing. Share them with your friends. Like, comment, subscribe, do all of those fun things. They're all free. They help the channel and they help the author. Because I am recording, it also means that I will not be able to engage in the middle of a chapter. I am happy to, hello, Clark Wesley. I am happy to engage in between chapters. But because I'm recording, it doesn't make for good audio for those who go and listen to it later. But you are welcome to chat with each other throughout the stream, ask questions. What do you think is going to happen? Give predictions, do all of that stuff. It's all a great thing to do when you chat with each other. And I will be happy to catch up with those chats in between the chapters and give you my perspective. Now, I haven't read this book any more than you guys have, unless you've read the book, and then great. I have not read the book. I read it all live with you, and that's where I find it all out. I am a voice actor. I am an audiobook narrator and a voiceover artist, which is why I do these, and I help to promote indie authors. All free for the indie authors, of course, because it's the right thing to do for them and to help them to promote the wonderful books that they write. But now, wherever you happen to be, if you happen to be in a hot place, get yourself a nice cold drink. If you're in a cold place, get yourself a hot drink. Sit back, relax, and prepare to enjoy as we will dive into The Blacksmith's Boy by Bruce Buchanan. If you check out my YouTube channel, you will see I have done this for quite a number of indie authors already. There are a lot of books available on the YouTube channel. Again, youtube.com/@SirArminius for you to check out from indie authors. And yes, it is a free service that I provide to indie authors. Don't get me wrong, I get a little something out of it too. What do I get? I get practice of reading different genres, and really, I get to read good books that I wouldn't have been able to necessarily come across if I didn't engage with them. And it provides them with the opportunity to get their book out to a wider audience, people who may not have had an opportunity to listen to it themselves or read it themselves. In general, it's all people who don't have audiobooks already, and so it gives them a venue to be able to do that, and helps them with the marketing, because unfortunately with an indie author, they are everything from writing, editing, design, publishing. They do it all. Marketing is a side that many of the indie authors aren't great at. This is my little way of giving back to be able to help them. So now, let's go ahead and dive in. We will be starting with Chapter 6 tonight, and again, if you missed any of the previous chapters, they are all available on the YouTube channel. And other than that, glad to have you guys here with us. Let's get started. Chapter 6. Maybe now isn't a good time, Aventil. I'm sure she's in the middle of something. But Isabella excused herself from a conversation with the emissary of agriculture and came to the bench where Bok and Aventil sat. Bok quickly rose to his feet and stood at attention as she approached. He smoothed his rough cotton shirt with his shaking hand. She took a spot on the bench beside Aventil. "Please sit, Bok. You are not a member of the Royal Guard, after all." I'm sorry, Your Majesty, Isabella smiled, revealing perfectly straight, gleaming white teeth. "All of this pageantry and formality must seem bizarre and unnecessary. There are times I feel that way as well. Anyway, it is a pleasure to meet you, and I am thankful you agreed to join our group." Isabella extended her hand to Bok without hesitation. The 5 identical gold hoops around her wrist jangled as she did. He responded with a handshake so limp that Yata surely would have punched his shoulder had she been present. He winced when his rough palms, calloused from years of work in his family's blacksmith shop, touched Isabella's soft, manicured hand. I also apologize for the vague nature of my summons, but as you heard, it is a matter of national security that needed to be kept secret until today's meeting. The healer bowed his head, still unable to meet her deep, dark brown eyes. Ah, pleased to meet you, Your Majesty. I, am honored to take part in this trip. Mother told me to make Soleh Valley proud. I'm not doing a very good job of it. No need to be so formal, Bok. After all, we are going to be working together these next few days. She raised her eyebrows. What do you make of all you heard today? Bok tucked his jittery hands in his lap. I do not know, Your Majesty. I am hardly in a position to. Isabella stopped him with a glance. Bok, you are here because you are needed. This is neither a test nor a trap. I want to know what you thought about what was said. And please, be honest. She touched his arm. He desperately hoped she did not feel his skin tingle through his shirt. I know the emissary of magic disagrees, and who am I to dispute what she says? But I believe these people, and nothing in the natural world can explain what they saw. It must be magic, and I suspect it is intentional. Isabella put her hand to her chin. I suspect the same thing. But go on. Why would someone do such a thing? Bok inhaled deeply. He hadn't had a chance to ponder that. How would I feel if Soleh Valley was attacked this way? If I had to guess, I would say to inflict fear. What do you mean? Isabella pushed up her sleeves, making her bracelets clink together again. Crops represent life itself, Your Majesty. Without them, we die. Our families die. Everyone in my community knows this. I believe the Yults were just unfortunate to be in the wrong location. This terrible crime was designed to create fear through the destruction of crops, and I suspect they will do it again. But what end would such a vicious act serve, Bok? He hadn't considered that either. But again, the answer came to him from his experiences growing up in a serving-class farming community. Working the farms isn't easy, Your Majesty, particularly when you can't even own the land you work. But there is something to knowing your family will eat that day. You described how frightened the people from Osa Creek were when you spoke with them. Desperate, fearful people will go to great lengths to protect their families, even defy their king. At this, Aventil leaned into the conversation. Surely you cannot mean the serving class of Imarina would rebel against King Isbiano. I have traveled these lands extensively and found great affection for the king. Oh, absolutely. People in my village love their king and respect the crown's rule, Bok quickly added. I simply mean that when pushed into a desperate situation, any people may respond in ways that don't make sense. I meant no disrespect to the royal family. And none was taken, Bok. Isabella nodded. I appreciate your candor. Does any of what I said make sense to you? Bok fidgeted with the cuff of his sleeve. She propped her chin in her hand. It makes perfect sense. In fact, your thoughts mirror my own. But there is no way of knowing until we get to Osa Creek, so why worry about it now? Aventil stood and stretched his back. Enough of this dour talk. Let us enjoy this time together before the hard work begins. Isabella's smile returned. My favorite merchant is correct, and I am being a neglectful host. Are you ready for the trip? Is there anything you need before we leave in the morning? Bok, still halfway, expected a crowd of nobles to emerge from hidden doors in the council chambers at any moment. Of course, they would point and laugh at the country healer who dared speak to his better as an equal. But in their brief time together, he believed in Isabella and Aventil's kindness. No, Your Majesty, Bok exhaled, somehow finding the nerve to string together a few coherent words. Actually, I do have one question. Why did you pick me? She raised her hands and her shoulders. It is as I told the Royal Council, Bok. Your experience nurturing crops may well prove valuable in halting the blight. No. What I mean is, why me? Surely there are other heels in Imarina more qualified. Isabella grinned and looked away as if she was embarrassed. It is possible for a royal to feel embarrassment. Bok, the truth is, we did not realize you had become Soleh Valley's healer. We reached out to Weni Khan, not realizing she had stepped down. My presence here is a fluke. And why wouldn't it be? Why would the princess need a blacksmith's boy from Soleh Valley? Blood rose in Bok's face again, and he looked to the shiny white floor jutting out from the edge of the rug. Isabella quickly shook her hands. No, do not misunderstand. After I spoke with Weni, I knew you were the healer we needed. She noted you rode 2 hours in driving rain to set a boy's broken arm, slept in a barn for 3 nights tending to an ailing horse, and that you have never refused a patient who cannot pay. Isabella jabbed a finger toward Bok. I want that person by my side. Bok said nothing, but his face remained unmoved. She leaned forward so that only Bok could hear. He raised his head to look at Isabella. I am 19 summers, Bok, the same as you. This is the first true royal responsibility I have undertaken, and I am terrified that I am not worthy. It is why I wore a long dress today. I did not want the assembly to see my knees trembling. That has to be a joke. Her grin indicated it was, and he couldn't help but smile in return. Here he was, joking around with the Princess of Imarina, as if they were just 2 friends sharing a laugh, and not sovereign and servant. But we will succeed despite our fears, you and I both. Do you really think so? Bok whispered. I do. I also believe I am a good judge of people, and I have the sense that you are capable of so much more than you ever believed possible. When Isabella says it, I can almost believe it too. Aventil placed his hand on her shoulder. My sweet, I hate to interrupt, but your attention is needed elsewhere. Isabella's smile returned. Here is a little something to cover any supplies you may need for our trip. She called over an aide who handed Bok a small purse of silver and gold coins. His eyes grew wide. The purse contained more money than his father and sister would make in a year of blacksmithing. Thank you, Your Majesty, but I couldn't possibly. Don't worry about it, Bok. It's coming from the treasury. Aventil slipped his arm around Isabella's waist. Not like the princess is spending her own hard-earned money. What is it you do again, anyway? It seems that my main responsibility is keeping you out of trouble. She pushed his hand away. And what did I tell you, Aventil? Not in public. He smiled and stage-whispered. Then maybe we should go somewhere private. Rather than maintain a stiff royal decorum, as Bok expected a princess to do, she giggled and raised an eyebrow. We will see you in the morning, Bok. Have a good rest of your day. Isabella took Aventil's hand, and Bok could tell he no longer was needed in the council chambers. But he left with this thought. He didn't know much about Princess Isabella, but letting her down felt like the most painful thing he could do. The royal council chambers cleared, save for a few servants cleaning up loose papers and sweeping the floors. Give me one moment, Isabella told Aventil. She then stepped into the ante-room separated from the dais by the purple curtain. King Isbiano stood there, his forehead creased under his silver crown. His closely trimmed graying goatee framed a frown. "Isabella, I gave you permission to lead the council meeting, not the expedition to Oso Creek." He bit his lower lip and shook his head. "Change your plans. You could be heading into danger." Hands on hips, she looked up into her father's eyes. What type of monarch would I be if I were not willing to take the same risks as those of my subjects? I have assembled a loyal team, and we will prove ourselves up to the challenge. "Oh, yes, you do have a fine group." Isbiano pulled down the hem of his loose-fitting purple tunic. "At least the members we know. But what about this Omat fellow? People talk about you welcoming a peasant healer into the company of nobles." "Let them talk," Isabella interrupted. "He wants to serve the kingdom. Why is that wrong?" Isbiano exhaled deeply. "You have so much of your mother in you, her intellect, and her sense of justice. I love those things in you just as I did in her. Together we raised a queen whose achievements will dwarf my own." He then put one hand on his daughter's shoulder and gestured in the direction of the council chambers. "But when you sit in that middle seat, every decision you make weighs heavy." Her nostrils flared. "As if I do not understand that responsibility. In case you have not noticed, I am up before dawn, every single morning, poring over reports, studying every aspect of commerce, security, international relations, even magic. And I am at my desk after the servants have gone to bed. No one makes me do these things. I do them to make sure I am ready to lead Imarina when that day comes." "I know, my child. You work so hard. No one could be more prepared for the job." He pulled his daughter into a tight hug. "What I mean is that you sometimes must look beyond your personal sense of right and wrong and consider what is best for the nation. Your desire to help the serving class is honorable. Just make sure you consider the consequences before you upend our social order." Isabella said nothing, but returned her father's embrace and rested her head on his shoulder. All right, guys, Chapter 6 down. Austin Rieger, Emma Jones, hello, hello. Glad to have you guys here with us. Glad to have all of you guys here, no matter what channel you happen to be on. It could be YouTube, Twitch, Kick, Rumble, X, TikTok. I like to share the love. Glad to have you guys here with me. If you're enjoying the stories so far and you've missed any part of it, you can always pick up the author's book. It is available on Amazon. The YouTube description will have some additional places that you can look, such as his website and his publisher's website. And all the chapters are, of course, available on the YouTube channel. Any of them that I read tonight will be available by tomorrow morning, probably later tonight, to be honest, but look tomorrow morning. And all of the chapters from earlier are all available there as well. And now, let me go check. Any questions from anybody? I'm not seeing any. No. There are none here. There are none here. No questions? Fantastic. Then that means it's time for us to get started on our next chapter. Oh, is that not a wonderful thing? Yes, I believe it is. So, here we go. As a reminder, I do record these, so if you say hello while I'm reading it, I will be happy to say hello after I finish the chapter. Chapter 7. Once again, Bok rose early the following day. After buying some new clothes from the tailor's shop in the palace basement, he had settled in his room early the previous evening. He wanted to make sure he was completely prepared and on time for the journey. He planned to be the first person at the meeting point at the West Stables. But when he arrived, a sound rang out from behind the expansive building. Think! 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 Longbow in hand and silver-white shirt tied around his waist, Aventil fired arrow after arrow at a small wooden target more than 100 feet away. Each of the arrows hit the middle of the board, but Aventil muttered and shook his head. Given the number of arrows on the ground and the amount of sweat on his face, he had been practicing for hours. His frustrated demeanor changed as soon as he noticed Bok. "Hello, my friend. Good to see you." He stopped his practice and walked over to Bok. The country healer leaned against a wooden beam supporting the stable's roof. The familiar smells of hay and horses brought a smile to his face, as did Aventil's marksmanship. "That was impressive, Aventil. I had no idea you were so accomplished at archery." "That? It was nothing. Just a hobby my parents consider a waste of time and money. But it gives me something to do other than get in Isabella's way." Aventil grabbed a clean towel from a hook on the stable's wall and mopped his face. Bok jumped when someone brushed against his arm. A green-clad attendant hustled past him to hand Aventil with a cool cup of water. "Ooh, that's good. Thank you." He drained the metal cup and handed it back to the servant, who bowed and left without saying a word. He could be me. If I worked at the palace, it would be as a servant. And would Aventil notice me then? "Good morning, Lord Amarinil." Commander Corrigan's gruff voice interrupted Bok's thoughts. The royal guardian sported a gray mustache, a strong arm, and a face like leather. After nodding to Aventil, Corrigan lifted a worn, scratched leather saddle, his biceps flexing under its weight. Aventil put his hand on Bok's shoulder and gently pushed him forward. "And good morning to you, Commander Corrigan. I'd like to introduce Bok Omat, healer of Soleh Valley. He will be accompanying us, as you know. Bok, this is Corrigan, commander of the Royal Guard." "I'm honored to meet you, sir." Bok saw the commander at the Royal Council meeting, but the two hadn't exchanged words until this moment. "You need a sword," Corrigan said without looking away from his shores. Bok rubbed his forehead. "Excuse me, sir?" "If you're going on this mission, you need a sword." It was not a question. Corrigan pulled a spare blade from a leather sack he brought with him and tossed it to Bok. Bok unsheathed the sword and examined the blade. He had never held a sword before, something he felt sure those in the palace would find amusing. Villagers like him and his neighbors depended on weapons that double as tools, such as axes, knives, and spears for self-defense. And you can't kill a deer, chop firewood, or clean trout with a broadsword, no matter how much it gleams. Corrigan then explained that the group would pose as a traveling merchant party, giving no official notice of their departure in Ithanel or arrival in Nassim. Along the way, they were to maintain a low profile, never appearing to be more than a routine, anonymous group of business travelers. "Better that whoever did this not know about our comings and goings." The commander also had decided against sailing upriver to Nassim, a decision Bok appreciated. He had never sailed on a boat and was glad he wouldn't have to on this voyage. Bok looked toward the palace, and ships, swords, and saddles suddenly left his mind, because Isabella glided down the brick path, Tovano and Lieutenant Wingate in tow. She had replaced the purple silk gown she wore to yesterday's briefing with white cotton pants, a loose-fitting tan shirt, and polished riding boots that nearly stretched to her knees. A wide-brimmed black hat replaced her tiara, and her long hair was tied back in a ponytail. Corrigan stood at attention, while the servant who had given Aventil the glass of water bowed deeply when she passed. Bok merely folded his hands at his waist and shuffled his feet. Isabella met him with a broad smile. Good morning, Bok. Are you ready for our adventure? His heart thumped against his ribcage. Absolutely, Your Majesty. I'm ready for anything. It is a lie, but how can I say any different to the princess? After a quick but warm greeting to each of the other men, Isabella looked around the stables and frowned. Where is Kotarian? If he causes us to delay our trip... No worries, Your Majesty. Kotarian ran into the courtyard as easily 3 times the speed of a normal man, pollen, dust, and pine needles flying in his wake. Look at that fancy peacock, Aventil muttered to Bok. He used a wind whisper spell to push himself through the courtyard so he could make a big entrance. Big deal. Isabella can do that too. Kotarian didn't let on if he heard the comments. He dusted off the sleeves of his gray coat. My apologies for being late, Your Majesty, but I know you wouldn't leave without me. He shot a smirk toward Tovano. After all, you'll undoubtedly need a skilled sorcerer before this mission is through. Isabella fixed her eyes on the sorcerers. What I need is for you to be ready on time. Every member of this team is important. We all need to remember that. And you need to take off that jacket and cap, Corrigan grumbled. We're supposed to be a trading group. Why would a sorcerer be riding with a band of spice merchants? Might as well paint a target on our backs. Kotarian pressed his hand to his chest as though wounded. But I'm representing the House of Magic. Listen to Corrigan, Isabella spoke slowly and quietly. Our security is his job, and he is expert at it. Kotarian stuck out his lower lip. Fine. He carefully folded the gray hat and jacket and tucked them into his saddlebag. First, though, he removed the starburst pin and affixed it to his shirt. With that, Isabella signaled to Corrigan to lead the traveling party out of the palace courtyard. Corrigan rode in front of the princess, with her bodyguard behind her. Aventil said the royal family trusted Wingate like a family member. The guard lived in the royal palace in a 4th-floor room adjacent to the princess's own. Bok had decided to ride Becky rather than take one of the horses from the palace stables. He realized his plow horse looked out of place among the row of fine royal steeds and the guardian's powerful war horses. But she was a strong, good-natured horse who could work from sunrise to sunset without tiring. Plus, Bok hated the idea of leaving her behind in the care of strangers. Good Becky. He stroked her head as she walked down the well-worn path leading out of the stables and through the palace's rear courtyard. This space behind the palace served as a working area, with numerous sheds, outbuildings, workshops, and storehouses to serve the practical needs of the large campus. The familiar black smoke of a blacksmith shop curled up from behind a greenhouse. So much activity. It's like a functioning city within the palace walls. Another section of the royal gardens jutted out into the rear courtyard. The expansive green space had to be many acres. Isabella rode up beside Bok and pointed to a plaza just inside the gardens. The royal gardens were my mother's favorite spot. She spent hours there every day the weather would allow, pruning, watering, and otherwise loving the flowers into existence. Isabella smiled at the fond memory. Even after she became ill, she spent many days there on that plaza, painting portraits of her beloved blossoms. I would bring my lessons and study at her side while she painted. In fact, Mother's grave is here in the gardens, just beyond that grove of trees. Bok swallowed hard. He certainly remembered Queen Imarina's death. He and Isabella were 12 summers, and the news was all anyone in Soleh Valley could talk about. The entire kingdom observed a full week of mourning. Many of his classmates were thrilled to have those days out of school, but all Bok could think was that a girl missed her mother terribly. Hearing the catch in Isabella's voice now, he knew she still did. He wished he could hug his own parents one more time before setting off for unknown lands. Chapter 7 complete. Need to drink something because, well, talking a lot, your voice tends to go a little bit. Ah, just a little drink. What's better than a monster drink, at 8:30 at night? Could there be anything? No. It is fantastic. All right. Well, I don't see any questions from anybody out there. You guys are once again welcome to put your questions into chat. I am happy to answer them when I have a moment to do so. Or you are welcome to chat with each other about the book as we go. Recorded chapters will all be available after the stream. Previous chapters, prologue through chapter 5, are already available on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/@SirArminius. And now, Chapter 8. The first part of the planned 5-day ride took them through a densely populated neighborhood north of the royal palace. Neatly kept two-story frame buildings, often with storefronts on the bottom floor and small homes upstairs, lined both sides of the street. The corners of each block typically housed businesses, temples, schools, or other larger brick or stone buildings. Single-level buildings crammed into the side streets. These structures were built from thin planks with gaps between each board. Children in threadbare clothes played tag in the narrow roads, darting out of the way when a donkey-drawn cart clomped by. This must be where the serving class lives in the city. Bok set his jaw and continued riding. He had to keep his eyes on the road to avoid trouble. People dashed in front of the riders, almost daring the horses to trample them. The spaces around the sidewalk tables overflowed with customers. Horse and hand-pulled carts moved slowly down each side in the street, with impatient travelers sometimes creating an impromptu third lane in between. They barely had been on the cobblestone road for an hour when traffic came to a halt after an ox cart carrying a load of melons lost a wheel, spilling fruit into the streets. Are you kidding? Such incompetence! Kotarian rolled his blue eyes to the sky and sighed loudly. Corrigan and Wingate dismounted and stood beside Isabella's horse. The commander scowled. Your Majesty, you may wish to dismount. It looks like this may take a few minutes. Wingate stood with his back to the princess to scan the crowd. Bok took that as an invitation and stepped down, too. Becky could use a break as well. He stroked his horse's mane as he waited. Within moments, a short, balding man carrying a string of cloth flowers walked down the street to meet the stalled group. Lord Imarina, so good to see you. It's been a while. You weren't so tall then. Aventil squinted at the man. Tartio Thanalar? It's been a while. Come, let's catch up. He stepped forward to meet Tartio on the sidewalk, away from the rest of the group. Bok couldn't hear their conversation, but by the number of times Aventil slapped Tartio's shoulder, he could tell it was jovial between long-time friends. After a few moments, Aventil came back to the group, which still was stuck behind the broken-down wagon. Tartio owns a couple of garment shops here in this neighborhood. The Imarina Mercantile Company has been his supplier for 20 summers. He wanted to catch up a bit, and he said this was for my lady friend, as he put it. Aventil presented the string of artificial red, orange, and white Delilahs to Isabella. Well, your lady friend thinks they are beautiful. She tied the bouquet to her saddle, removed a single cloth flower, and placed it in the brim of her wide hat. What do I have to do to get flowers? Kotarian said to Wingate, but the guardian refused to acknowledge the young sorcerer's attempt to start a conversation. Come on, Wingate. The lovebirds won't talk with me. The commander already doesn't like me, and there's no way I'm talking to him. He gestured with his eyes toward Tovano, who stood on the opposite side of the horses from Kotarian. That leaves you and the peasant. Wingate waved off Kotarian. I have no time to placate your need for attention. Please do not bother me while I am on duty. With that, Wingate turned his back and scanned the streets for possible danger. Does he ever get off duty? Kotarian sighed. I guess that leaves you, O mage of the mud huts. Enthrall me with your wisdom. Bok looked around in vain for someone to cut in. At least it looks like it's just a wheel. If the wagon had broken an axle, we would be here for a while, but I think they should be able to get this fixed momentarily. Kotarian produced a brown glass flask from his saddlebag and threw back a large gulp. Bok, you are inspiring. Given the choice of your insights and grain alcohol, well. He took another deep drink from the flask and turned away from Bok. I hope he didn't hear that. I wish Yata was here. She would punch Kotarian square in his nose. This melon is good. The true leader sat at Totario Thanalar's desk and sliced another piece of cantaloupe with a paring knife. The merchant's smile turned into a shiver. He quickly glanced back into the store and closed his office door. Are you mad? What if someone saw you come in? They didn't. The true leader raised his hand. Blue-green magical energy glimmered on his fingers. He leaned forward. The melon dripped juice on the wooden desktop. Did you get it done? Yes. Tatario looked down at the floor. Although I feel awful about it. Lord Amaranil's family has been good to me. The merchant's hands balled into fists. His voice rose. And I know who his traveling companion is. I could be charged with treason. Isbiano may be a merciful king, but how much grace would he show a man who conspired against his beloved daughter? The true leader smiled and ran his hands through his thick hair. You just handed your friend a necklace for his lady. You didn't do anything wrong. He stabbed a piece of melon with his knife. Tell me, Tartio, do you think Imarina is losing its way? That we are drifting from traditions that have brought us centuries of peace and prosperity? Is that the Imarina we want for your children and their children? Well, yes, but you are aware that Princess Isabella advocates allowing the serving class to own more property. Perhaps as much as, a garment store. That peasant your friend is traveling with, she would have him be your neighbor. Yes, I know. Tardio sighed. And that's wrong. I agree that it must be stopped. But I don't want to hurt anyone. And you didn't. No one is getting hurt here, my friend. Those cloth flowers have a minor enchantment allowing my associates to simply track the princess and her party. That's all. The true leader fished a carved wooden token of a gray wolf from his pocket. He fidgeted with the token and placed his other hand on Tartio's shoulder. Trust me, in a few days, you will be glad you are on our side. Stunting on everybody. Hello. This is amazing. As someone who is interested in starting narration, how did you get started? Well, I think you are on my Twitch channel, which happened to just start an ad. So let me type in a response just because you may not see it. Really? How did I get started in voice acting? It's one of the nice things about things, as they stand today. Anybody with a microphone can really get started in voice acting. Um, um, there we go. Ad break is finished. So, um, that's why I typed the answer in there. I knew we were on a Twitch ad break. Um, Pretty much anybody can get started into voice acting nowadays. All you need is a microphone. Now, I don't recommend a microphone like you would have on a headset or anything like that. They're just not of that good of quality. Not one of those, not a webcam mic, anything like that. Get yourself a decent cheap microphone. Uh, any kind of a USB mic. The Yetis are decent starting out mics. They're not great overall, but they're decent for a starting out mic. And then practice and get into it. Voice acting is really one of those things that anybody has the ability to do, and it doesn't cost a lot to get into it, and there's opportunities for pretty much every voice out there. I would very much recommend starting with something shorter. So the question was, what length book do you recommend starting with? I have a couple of professionally produced audiobooks that I have out there, all of them on the shorter side. I want to say the shortest one is a little under 100 pages. And it's because, for starters, as you are getting started into narration, if it's not something that you've done before, your voice, like any other muscle, needs to be trained. Your stamina is just not going to be as good as you might want it to be when you are first starting out. So I would recommend you look for things to narrate that are on the shorter side. Now, part of the reason why I do these free audiobook readings for indie authors is because it's great practice for me. And I've been doing these for a while now. And I can see how far I've come since I started and now. My vocal stamina is much better than it used to be. I'm able to maintain my pace and my energy throughout much longer reads by having done this for a while. Now, there are some great ways that you can get out there and get started. One way or one place that I recommend is, I want to say it's LibriVox. LibriVox does narrations of books that are outside of copyright now. And typically, it's not going to be just one person who is doing the narration. You will get a chapter. You may get 3 chapters. You can ask for more as you go through. But you will have different voices that will read through that entire book because it's all volunteer. Fantastic way to get started in doing it. The other thing that you can look at is look on ACX. ACX is Audible's platform where narrators can go and apply to authors and audition with them for doing audiobooks with them. Look for the books, and again, my recommendation would be that are under 3 hours to start with. You are welcome to go to larger ones than that, but that's where I would start. Yeah, I was looking into that, which is why I was asking, do you create a portfolio of work over time and then present that to authors? You sure can. I work a lot with the indie author community, as you can guess by the fact that I do live readings for indie authors. And one of the recommendations I have for them is get auditions from people. If you've narrowed it down to 3, 4 people that you want to do auditions for, ask for some samples of work that they have done previously. That way you can hear how they may treat a different style of a book, what kind of energy they keep up throughout a book reading, things like that. Now, obviously, when you're first starting out, you don't have a body of work. Again, I have 3 books that I have professionally narrated that are available on Audible, as well as potentially some of the other platforms. 2 of them were ACX, so they'll just be on Audible. One of them came through Authors Republic, so that may be on many others as well. And I have those I can point to, but I also have this that I do that I can then point people to. And this gives me the ability to narrate through lots of different genres, including fiction, nonfiction, fantasy, science fiction. I have a murder mystery that I narrated. And it gives me a portfolio of work that I can then point people to say, hey, if you want to hear more of what my voice sounds like in a live setting, because a live setting is very different than a recorded setting. If I make a mistake here, I just have to keep rolling. I don't stop and shorten any pauses, anything else. I just have to keep on rolling along because it's live. If somebody wants to have just an idea of what my voice sounds like, they can come out and listen here for lots of different genres, or I can offer larger bodies of auditions for them. Maybe rather than 2, 3 pages, I audition with an entire chapter for them. Now, again, what you can do to build up a body of work and a portfolio, if you don't have one, everybody has to start from nothing, basically. Look on Gutenberg.org. All of those books available on there are all outside of copyright. Means you can narrate them and do whatever you really want to do with them. You can build your own portfolio of work that way, of a chapter here, a chapter there, short readings, different characters, accents, whatever you want to do, and build it through that, so that way you are putting together items that nobody is going to give you any trouble about having read. So it's a way to go about getting started in being a voice actor. The other thing is, if you are looking on ACX, consider the people who are offering the royalty share options. For anybody not familiar, royalty share is the narrator only gets paid based on a percentage of the sales of the audiobooks. Means you're not getting paid anything up front. All the time that you put into it, it's just time you put into it. If it sells well, you get a return on it. If it doesn't sell at all, you get nothing. The author pays you nothing right away, meaning they can take a risk on somebody who does not have a portfolio of work because they're not paying up front for it. And it gives you a way to, if it does well, you can still make a lot of money out of it. If it doesn't do anything, at least you've built your portfolio. It's a way forward as you're getting started. You are very welcome. I hope that answered some good questions for you and gives you an idea, not only you stunting on everybody, but anybody else who was curious about this. It's an easy field to start in, a hard field to do well in. Primarily because, again, entrance cost for a narrator is very low. A microphone, a set of headphones, and they don't have to be good headphones. This is a $900 microphone. These are expensive headphones. and something that you can edit your audio in. That's all you need to get started. Means entry cost is really low, but without a copious amount of practice, you're not going to get great. Oh, I will tell you, if I go back and listen to some of the things I did originally, and I thought I was great coming into this. I have years of experience. I did theater. I was in the army, so I have a lot of experience with projecting with my voice, all doing all these things, and it's just a different creature. Everybody can start in it, but to be good, as with everything else, takes a ton of practice. But all of you guys are not here to listen to me expound upon audiobooks, although I am happy to answer the questions, and I'm glad that you asked. It's important to ask the questions, and I am happy to help anybody to get started in this. One of the hardest things that I learned when I started doing more professional voice narration. My voice is not right for everybody. I do some decent accents. I can read well. I can speak eloquently. I'm clear when I speak. However, my voice is not right for everybody, which means because there are a lot of voices, you can always find somebody who has the right thing. Uh, yes, or you could look on, there should be some stuff there. Easiest way to find out more information about me is to go to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/at Sir Arminius. It's where I put all of the recorded chapters from the things that I've read. And I don't remember if I put my Linktree link on Twitch or not. It's possible I did not, because why would I ever think about doing something like that? But if not, you could check out my Linktree, which is linktr.ee/Maloney.voiceover. As last name Maloney, I do voiceover. So my link tree is maloney.voiceover, and that'll have links to all of the different stuff that I've got out there. Anyway, let's go ahead and get back to the book, shall we? Everybody, please feel free to continue to come forward with questions. I am happy to answer them in between the recorded chapters. But now, Chapter 9. After 3 days of uneventful travel, the 7 riders had slipped from the farmlands and villages into the north country forest. The dirt road narrowed into a thin, faint path through the dense pine trees, often veering around briar thickets and other natural barriers. The summer tree canopy was so thick that Bok had trouble seeing more than a few feet ahead of where Becky slowly trod. As the sun began to set, the group stopped for the night in a small clearing near a stream. Since he had the most experience preparing meals, Bok agreed to handle the cooking. Corrigan and Aventil set up the campsite, while Wingate built a fire. Corrigan and Wingate tried to convince Isabella to let them construct a tent for her, but she refused. "If the rest of the group plans to sleep on the ground, then so shall I." Meanwhile, Kotarian begged off from helping with the chores, claiming he had to practice his spells. He spent the rest of the daylight poring over his spellbook at the edge of the makeshift camp. While he waited for the cooking fire to warm up, Bok spotted a thicket of blackberries. He could use them to whip up a simple cobbler, and undoubtedly his new colleagues would appreciate dessert after a hard day on the road. He had just started away from the campsite when Isabella ran to his side. "Do you mind if I help?" "Of course, Your Majesty." Bok handed her an oak bucket. Her request surprised him, but he hardly could decline it, even if he'd wanted to. Again, he felt his pulse thump in his throat as they walked into the thicket. He deftly plucked a handful of juicy, ripe berries and deposited them into the bucket with a thump. Picking berries with the princess. Oh, Bok, what have you gotten into? The sweet aroma of honeysuckle vines entangled with the blackberries filled the hot, sticky air. Dry pine needles crunched under Bok's feet as he rocked back and forth to select the ripest berries. Ow! Isabella pulled her hand back from the briars, a drop of blood pooling on her fingertip. Bok flinched when Isabella yelped. He reached for his healer's bag, but she waved him off. It is a thorn prick, not a dagger wound. I should have been more careful. Bok handed her a clean rag. Have you picked many blackberries, Your Majesty? Isabella peered inside her bucket and made an exaggerated show of counting her meager harvest. Let us see. 4, 5. I have picked 6 in my lifetime. And you? Bok smiled a silly grin. Oh, a few more than that. It's one of my daily chores back home, assuming I'm not out on healer duties. Soon I hope to train my nephew to take over. Dimples formed on Isabella's cheeks as she smiled. I hope your absence does not create too much hardship for your family. No, I think they'll be able to manage without me. They resumed picking side by side. But my father worried about me traveling to Ithanel. I'm glad he doesn't know about this mission. A loving but fearful father. Yes, I am quite familiar with the concept. She chuckled. Paternal fears are one thing we have in common. Bok raised an eyebrow. Isabella's smile grew broader. It's true. Just last month I journeyed into town to buy Aventil a gift. Wingate and I arrive at the store, only to find it empty of any other customers. The shopkeeper explained that my father had ordered it closed to the public for my security. I was so embarrassed. Okay, I guess you do know about an overprotective father. Bok's head grew dizzy. As a member of the serving class, I wouldn't be allowed in these same stores. And they mean well, I know. Are these berries ripe enough to pick? She held up the bucket, and Bok nodded that they were. Isabella propped her hand on her hip. Anyway, I want to hear more about your work. I know of folk magic, but I comprehend so little about it. As I understand it, you employ magic in harmony with nature. That is very different from high magic, which manipulates mystic energies to achieve things not possible in the natural world. Bok relaxed his shoulders a little. I'm not sure how interesting it is. Last week, I used folk magic to help a mother goat deliver her kid. Not the stuff that fables are written about, Your Majesty. Point made. Well, the life of the crown princess can be tedious, too. Bok couldn't hide his bemused grin at that statement. Isabella playfully cocked her head to the side, tossing back her wavy hair. Why are you smiling, Bok Omat? You think I do nothing but flit from state dinners to formal balls? Bok stopped picking and turned to her, his face flushing. Not at all. I just found it funny to think my simple life could be of interest to someone like you. I have so little, and you have everything. I suppose we have a lot to learn from each other. She turned to face Bok. I have been granted many unearned privileges, and our nation's customs are unfair to those in your class. For example, why should everyone assume you will be our cook? Oh, I don't mind. Bok waved his hands. It's no trouble, really. Her voice became softer and deeper. But the assumption is what bothers me. I suspect it bothers you as well. Bok didn't reply directly. He didn't have to. He pressed his lips together, lest his voice crack, and took a deep breath. Okay, so you don't spend all your time in dress fittings. What do you mean about your life being tedious at times? I simply meant Well, there are times I wish I could disappear into this forest, if only for an afternoon. She looked around at the canopy of tall pine trees surrounding them. To Bok, the location was as commonplace as his family's three-room home. But Isabella soaked in every sight and sound in the woods. It is an honor to be our next queen, but I do not regret my life's path. But it has not always been easy. Would it surprise you to learn that before I met Aventil, there was no one in my life I considered a friend? You didn't have any friends? As annoying as Yata could be at times, he'd had his sister's companionship his entire life. Surely there are young women and men of the palace, and they are the ones flitting from state dinners to formal balls. The weight of a nation doesn't rest on their backs. Bok shooed away a yellow jacket buzzing around the sweet berries. He couldn't understand that type of duty, but responsibility to others was something he knew. I get the sense you wouldn't be content living an idle, rich life, Your Majesty. You wouldn't have added magic to your duties if you were. She smiled again, then turned her eyes downward. Are you sure we just met yesterday? I am afraid I can never be prepared enough for my role, but I suppose worrying is what a royal must do. No. Bok pointed his finger at her, momentarily forgetting their vast differences in station. It is what a good royal does. Believe me, someone in your position doesn't have to care about people like me. But you do. To Bok's surprise, Isabella got silent for a moment. He held his breath. I hope I didn't overstep my place. But she just blinked a few times. Bok, you do not know how much those words mean. Ho-ho! What was that? Isabella swiveled her head to scan the treetops. It's just an owl on the hunt. The sun will go down soon. And our conversation must end, unfortunately. Bok dropped the last handful of berries into his bucket. Well, this has been a wonderful time, Your Majesty. But I suspect the others will be grumbling if I don't serve supper soon. Tovano will be for sure. That old man can eat his own weight and not gain an ounce. Oh, outside of the royal council chambers, you are Bok, and I am Isabella. Let me work on that. Um, that's going to take some time. After spending more time with the princess sounded wonderful to Bok. I should add that the other part of voice acting is acting. It's actually what will change a good narrated book, or what will differentiate a good narrated book from a bad narrated book. Somebody who just reads the words, or somebody who tries to imagine and act out the words. It does make a difference. All right, let me check for other questions really quick. Nothing there, nothing there, nothing there, nothing there, nothing there, nothing there. Yeah, and as with everything else, it's really about practice. The more you practice, the more you do it, the better you will get at it. It's okay. I've been doing this for years and leaps and bounds better because I do these live reading streams every Tuesday and Saturday. I know I am leaps and bounds ahead of where I was when I started. Do I still have a long way to go? Of course I do. It's something I don't think I will ever stop learning on. But I consider one of the best voice actors, or how about I say couple of voice actors, to be Michael Kramer and Kate Redding. If you've never listened to their work, if you're a fan of The Wheel of Time at all, they are the ones who narrated the Wheel of Time series. Listen to their narration of book 1 and compare it to their narration of book 15. These are very good voice actors, and you can hear the difference in how much better they got through the course of that. Some of it is familiarity with the writing and the characters and stuff like that, but you can hear the difference because of the amount of work that they did in a lot of what they did. The more you practice, the better you get. As with everything you do, I would encourage, if nothing else, spend some time every day reading out loud to just yourself, to others. Find a way to practice reading aloud, and you will find that it will get better as you go. All right, let's get into Chapter 10. Bok cooked a stew using some vegetables they had packed, flavoring it with some wild herbs and mushrooms he found in the forest. He had helped his mother in the kitchen since he had been old enough to stir a pot. Well, he wouldn't pit his culinary talents against Tana Omat's. He could whip up a decent meal. Still, he was surprised that his simple country cooking was met with approval from a group used to fine meals. Isabella waved a spoon, which reflected the gleam of the fire. "This is exquisite, Bok. I'm going to insist you share the recipe with the palace kitchen." Bok hoped the light from the campfire masked his blushed face. "It's nothing special, just something I grew up on." "A peasant dish, then," Kotarian sneered. Of course, that hadn't stopped him from filling his plate with a second helping of stew. "I appreciate your kind words, Your Majesty." Bok ignored Kotarian, content to bask in his other colleague's praise. After the meal, Tovano launched into a rambling yarn about a long-ago trip. Isabella and Aventil left the campfire to wash up, and the two guardians followed behind them, leaving Tovano and Bok on one side of the fire and Kotarian on the other. "I assume you are handling the dishes as well?" Kotarian uttered a brief incantation and twisted his fingers awkwardly in an arcane gesture. His empty plate then floated across the campsite and into Bok's lap. Tovano leaned forward, enjoying a bowl of blackberries drizzled with honey. "That's a push-pull spell, Bok. It doesn't mean our young friend shouldn't wash his own plate, but he demonstrated how high magic can be used to move objects effortlessly. You see, high magic manipulates energy." "Why bother to explain the inner workings of high magic to him, an outsider lacking in the acumen?" Kotarian scoffed. Bok winced. Well, he had the acumen for folk magic. Only nobles could possess the ability to perform high magic, as Kotarian had pointed out. He continued, "And really, Tovano, a push-pull spell. Its proper name is Tranogian's territorial transport, but you know that." "Well, that's what the House of Magic calls it." Tovano laughed as he scratched his thinly bearded chin. "Those grey jackets love to stamp their names on everything." "You used to wear a grey jacket too." Kotarian stood and stepped back from the fire. He then stomped away into the dark woods toward the creek. Tovano silently rooted around in his travel bag and produced a small pouch. Bok watched Kotarian leave the campsite. I'm sorry if I did something to offend him." Tovano shook his head. "Nothing you did, my young companion. Kotarian's talents are only exceeded by his temper. He carries a great deal of pain inside him. One day, He will either reckon with it, or it will destroy him. But still, I'm glad he is with us." Bok placed another log on the fire. "Why? You have far more experience, and you've said Isabella is one of the brightest students you've ever taught." Tovano fiddled with the pouch's drawstring, trying to pry it open. "Both true, but I've always been more of a teacher than a combat sorcerer. Isabella has a broader skill set, but she has never tested herself in a practical setting before. For all his bluster, Kotarian is a skilled young sorcerer with self-confidence and sharp reflexes. Those talents could come in handy if things turn ugly." Bok wrapped his arm around his knees. "So you think we could be heading into danger?" "I hope not, but I would be lying if I told you it wasn't a real possibility." This wasn't what Bok had planned on when he answered that royal summons. Being over his head was one thing. Losing his head was another. There was little he could do about it now, though, and something else the sorcerer said had intrigued him. "So, you used to be in the House of Magic?" Tovano scooped dried rook bark out of the pouch and into his cup. Then he added hot water from the kettle over the fire. Sassafras tea. My grandmother used to love that," Bok said. "I didn't know people in Ithanel drank it, particularly advisors to the crown." Tovano gave him a hint of a grin. "You might be surprised, and I'm not ignoring your question. Yes, I was once a full member of the House of Magic, long before Kotarian was there. He doesn't know the whole story as to why I had to leave, and at this late hour after a long day of riding, I don't feel like recounting it. Just know that I am happier at the royal palace than I ever was on Sonarian Square." He leaned back, closed his eyes, and sipped his tea. "Interesting. It certainly explains the tensions between Tovano and the House Sorcerers, including Kotarian." Bok hoped they would be able to coexist on this trip, and he also wanted Tovano to share more of his knowledge in the days to come, but he couldn't shake the elderly sorcerer's warning of pending danger. Bok scooped up the dishes from around the campsite, including Kotarian's, and washed them with the remaining hot water. No one save Kotarian had asked him to do this chore, but normally such duties would be performed by one of his social rank. Better to do it without being asked to avoid any conflict. The group soon settled in to sleep around the embers of the campfire, with Aventil offering to take the first watch. Bok crawled into his canvas bedroll and closed his eyes. "You are Bok, and I am Isabella. As if we are friends, not royal and serving class. Bok Omat, what have you gotten yourself into?" While his brain raced, he covered his hand to stifle a yawn. A long day on the road and a lack of sleep the previous evenings had caught up with Bok. I wonder what adventures tomorrow will bring. He wouldn't have to wait long for an answer. We have a problem." Aventil's quiet but firm voice pulled Bok out of a shallow slumber. He struggled to grasp where he was for a second, until his hand touched pine needles and he saw the moon overhead. A panorama of glowing lights appeared among the pine trees and underbrush surrounding the clearing, like a field of stars. Then he heard the faint footfalls of predators. Bok realized those lights were eyes reflecting moonlight. His heart rate jumped when the animals behind those eyes stepped out of the trees. 24 wolves had surrounded the camp and closed in on the sleeping travelers. "Well, that doesn't seem good." "It may be a problem for our intrepid heroes," But I guess we will have to find out, won't we? You would think that wolves would stay away from a fire and an armed band of people, but you never know, especially if they were pushed there by magic. All right. I guess it's time for us to get started onto our next chapter, isn't it? We need to find out exactly, precisely, what is going on with all of these wolves. This will be the last chapter of the evening, but doesn't mean that your pursuit of the blacksmith's boy has to end here. You can always pick up the author's book on Amazon, through his website, through the publisher's website, or go back and listen to the previous chapters if you missed any of them. All available on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/@SirArminius. And now, Chapter 11. While Aventil edged over to his bow and quiver, Bok rousted the others. Wingate bounced to his feet like a startled cat. Broadsword in hand, he moved the princess to the center of the circle, while Corrigan drew his own sword and stood in front of her. Isabella hardly retreated in fear. Instead, she flexed her hands and slowed her breathing to prepare a spell. Bok inched over to Kotarian's bedroll, never looking away from the snarling wolves. The campfire had burned low, but even in its dim light, he could tell the wolves' eyes were bloodshot and their fur bristled. What's more, they moved in concert to completely encircle the camp and prevent Bok and his friends from fleeing. When one stepped forward, another filled the gap to its left or right. Wolves don't normally act like this. Something unnatural is going on. Bok shook Kotarian's bedroll where the sorcerer's shoulder should be, but found it empty. However, that was a problem that would have to wait. As one, the savage wolves leaped into the camp. Corrigan caught the first with a slash of his sword, but a second and third knocked the royal guardian to the ground. Before they could reach his throat, Wingate grabbed them by the backs of their necks and threw them off. However, 3 more wolves attacked the guardians, one of which caught its jaws around Wingate's calf. Tovano's claims to be more of an educator than a warrior unfortunately proved to be more than modesty. The sorcerer struggled to find the right words and gestures to help Corrigan and Wingate fight off their attackers. Tovano used a variation on the push-pull spell. Kotarian would have called it Fenarian's featherless flotation to levitate above them. But one of the wolves latched its teeth around his pants leg and pulled him down roughly. Only Corrigan's quick swordsmanship saved him from death. The healer was right. It's as if these animals are being controlled by some outside force, Tovano said to no one in particular. He cast a spell at the nearest wolf. Lights dazzled in front of the animal's eyes, briefly making the moonlit campsite as bright as midday. The wolf stopped its advance, looked around as if it had just awakened in an unfamiliar place, then ran away into the thick expanse of pine trees. Meanwhile, Isabella cast a flash fire spell. A bright burst of flame projected from the princess's hands and incinerated 2 wolves mid-leap. She and Aventil stood back to back. She illuminated the dark campsite with bursts of fire, and he placed arrows precisely between the ribs of approaching wolves. Still, the mass of feral beasts grew closer, its ability to close ground superior to Isabella and Aventil's desperate efforts to fight them off. Bok got caught watching the fight and realized that a wolf stood between him and his sword. He'd inadvertently left it strapped to Becky's saddle while preparing supper. His entire body tensed like an iron bed spring. Wingate had piled their saddles at the edge of the clearing. If I move carefully, perhaps a wolf won't see me. He took one step toward the saddle, and the wolf spun to face him, a violent mass of muscle, fur, and fang. The wolf sprinted toward Bok. No, not toward me, toward Isabella. Her back was turned to cast another spell at the wolves attacking her from the opposite side. "Bok, stop that one!" Aventil yelled. Bok froze. Should he reach for his sword? Tackle the animal with his bare hands? Before he could decide, the wolf raced past him. Bok made a feeble effort to grab its hind legs, only to come up empty. The wolf now had a direct line on the unsuspecting princess. "Aventil, what? Oh!" Isabella hit the ground hard, knocked there by her boyfriend. The wolf's nails scraped across his back as it leaped over its intended prey. He dropped his bow in the scramble, and the blue-green aura around her hands vanished. Both laid among the pine needles covering forest floor and tried to push themselves up to their feet before the regrouping wolves could attack again. "I'm coming!" Rather than take time to go back for his sword, Bok instead grabbed a still smoldering log from the fire as a weapon. He ran toward Isabella and Aventil, only to be knocked to the ground himself by another wolf. The wolf mounted Bok in an instant, snapping at his face, its hot, fetid breath barely an inch from his nose. He grabbed the fur at each of the animal's shoulders and pushed up for all he was worth to keep its fangs from ripping his skin open. His muscles strained, and he gritted his teeth in a desperate effort to stave off death. But the wolf was in a position of leverage, and within seconds it would overpower Bok. He closed his eyes. "I hope Aventil and Isabella escape. I wish I could see Mother, Father, and Yata one more time." "Roar!" The wolf's fur stood on end as a blue-tinted lightning bolt ended its life. Bok's hands tingled like he had plunged them into a hive of bees. His heart raced like he had run the whole way from Ithanel. "But I am alive, and so are my friends." Through blurry vision, he saw Isabella and Aventil were both back on their feet. Bok drank in precious oxygen in greedy gulps. He threw the wolf's charred carcass to the side, unable to stand and barely able to breathe. The adrenaline pumping through his veins blurred his vision and made it hard to think. A pang in his gut urged him to run away, but his legs were as heavy as the anvil in his family's shop. After a few gasps, he was able to lean up and see his savior. He could scarcely believe what he saw. Kotarian casually walked through the center of the campsite, eldritch energy exploding from his hands. One spell dispatched two of the wolves stalking Isabella and Aventil, while another blast sent more scattering. "Tisk, tisk. I go away for 5 minutes to clear my head, and everything falls apart." His hands literally smoked, but were unburned, from the impressive display of high magic's destructive potential. No one could dispute that the boastful sorcerer had turned the tide. In moments, the few remaining wolves retreated into the woods, leaving the travelers frightened but largely unharmed, save for Wingate's wounded leg. "Here, let me take a look at that." Bok reached into his healer's bag. His face flushed both from the surge of energy expended in the fight and his embarrassment at having frozen when Isabella and Aventil needed him. "No, I'm fine. There's no need," Wingate said. It was the most Bok had heard the giant bodyguard speak since the trip began, but the man's baritone voice threatened to shake the trees around them. Isabella raced over to examine her bodyguard's injury. "Let him tend your wounds, Wingate. We need you at full strength." With that, he relented and let Bok clean and dress his injuries. Aventil propped himself against his longbow. "So, what caused these wolves to intrude on our good night's sleep? Did they think we would make an easy dinner? Or could they just be rabid?" The group turned as one to Bok. He wished he could crawl into a hole rather than answer his friend's question. I don't think so. Wolves usually go after a stray sheep or chicken, not a party of well-armed humans. And I see no signs that these animals were mad." Bok is right, Tovano nodded. These wolves didn't think we were prey. There was a purpose behind their attack. A purpose? Isabella wrinkled her nose. But these are mindless beasts. Perhaps, but magic can make a beast or a man do strange things, Tovano said. Did you see the reddish tint to their eyes? The sorcerer gingerly knelt on arthritic knees to check one of the dead wolves. See, that red aura is gone now that the animal is dead. Magic? I've never heard of any spell that would control animal behavior. Not in any of my classes, anyway. Gotarian dusted off his sleeves as he walked into the conversation. Nor have I, the princess agreed. Bok, you know more about animals than any of us. Is there anything in folk magic that could explain this attack? Not that I know of, Your Majesty. Folk magic is used to heal, not to harm. She turned next to Tovano, who still examined the dead wolf. If magic was involved, can we find a spell signature on one of these wolves? I don't think so. Tovano shook his head, then painfully returned to a standing position. Bok furrowed his brow, and Tovano must have noticed, because he put his hand on the young man's shoulder. Every spell leaves a trace of mystical energy that gives us a bit of information about the spell and the person casting it. Sort of like when you write on a table. You sometimes leave a faint impression in the wood underneath. But in this case, we are too far removed from the original incantation to pull a spell signature. Perhaps if the wolves were still alive, but dead, we may never learn how this was done, or why. His leg bandaged, Wingate resumed his normal stance without as much as a wince. We could have stumbled into an area that was being guarded. For some reason, in which case we shouldn't have any further trouble. Or maybe someone doesn't want us investigating the blight. Although that still raises the question of how they knew where we were and where we were going. Corrigan nodded as he cleaned his sword. In any case, we should alter our route a bit just to be safe. Very well. Isabella untied her hair and shook out her long brown locks. Since we are not likely to learn anything else tonight, I suggest we get back to sleep. Standing around talking will not make tomorrow's ride any easier. I'll take watch, Bok volunteered. He wouldn't be getting any more sleep this night. After my performance, I don't deserve any. The rest of the party went back to their beds, and Bok crouched by Isabella and Aventil's spot around the fire. His fight-or-flight instincts had settled down, replaced by a nauseated feeling in his stomach. My friends nearly died because of my inaction. I don't know if I can get rid of that feeling, but I have to address it. Before you get to sleep, I need to apologize. I don't know what happened to me. Bok, do not trouble yourself. Isabella reached up and took Bok's hand. You never have been in a life-or-death situation before, nor have I. But you and Aventil were in danger, and I did nothing. I just froze. She gave his hand a squeeze. Out of shock, not apathy. When you regained your senses, you ran to our aid despite the danger. No apologies are needed. Listen to her, Bok. About everything. Aventil turned around and propped his head against his hands. You'll get another chance. Now go do the guard duty you volunteered for. And so he did. Bok still regretted his poor performance that evening, but thanks to Isabella and Aventil's grace, the sick feeling in his stomach subsided. Just a little. All right, everyone. Well, we made it through to chapter 11, which means on the next stream, which will be Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern, we will start into chapter 12. The first 11 chapters and the prologue will all be available on the YouTube channel by tomorrow morning. Again, youtube.com/@SirArminius. I hope you guys will stop out there to check it out. If you do, like, subscribe, comment, do all of those fun things. It helps me to continue to grow the channel, to continue to help more indie authors, and it helps to get a larger audience, for these books. And of course, the algorithm loves it when people like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you to all of you. The greatest gift that you can give me is the gift of your time, and I appreciate that you guys gave me the gift of yours this evening, whether it was for 5 minutes or an hour and a half. Thank you. I hope you will also stop out there to check out the author's work. Once again, this was a reading from The Blacksmith's Boy by Bruce Buchanan. Thank you, Jeff. Much appreciated. And the book is available on Amazon, on his website, and on the publisher's website. Information is on the YouTube descriptions, and it'll be on all of the recorded chapters as well. I hope you guys all have a wonderful weekend ahead. I will see you guys all again soon. Have a great night, everybody.